You're listening to The Sizzle.
Iron Skillet Sports presents.
Are you ready for Boyd's Noise? You know who it is. You know what it is. It's The Sizzle here on Sizzle Radio, because we're on Iron Skillet Radio, Iron Skillet Television. It's The Sizzle, and we're here with James Boyd of the NWI Times. James, how are you doing? How's everything today?
Doing good. Like I told you all right before we came on the air, I'm very excited to be back covering prep sports. Obviously a little different now with limitations on crowds and having to wear a mask all the time, but whatever adjustments I have to make personally, I'm willing to make them just to get out there and do my job. You know, it was pretty weird being in the house for, 2 or 3 months and not being able to do much, but just make a bunch of phone calls. So it's good to actually see the coaches and the players once again.
Yeah, it is. It's good to have the sports back, and it's good to have you back on the scene. So let's hop right into it. With high school sports in this pandemic, what are your thoughts on how the region has handled the response? What are their protocols and things that they put in place for students and fans' safety when they're coming to games?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I'll start off with is that, we had 5 programs shut down, fall sports, at least fall contact sports. I know that the school city of Hammond shut down, and also Whiting. So Clark, Gavitt, Hammond, Morton, and then Whiting all don't have football seasons this year. But so that was kind of disappointing. And a couple others are suspended right now, like Calumet and EC Central. But I was able to cover Andran at Maryville for the Battle of Broadway week 1 last week. And it was pretty much the same. Obviously, there's limits on crowds. I know the IHA said they can only have like 250 people per set of bleachers. Maryville had maybe a little bit more than the usual, because they have such a huge stadium. So they got to figure out what's considered a bleacher, at their particular stadium. But for the most part, it's not the same as it normally would be for that type of game. Then obviously everyone had to wear a mask to get in. They were constantly going over the PA system, encouraging people to social distance, keep their masks on. And obviously you got people that are going to do the right thing. You got people that are probably going to flaunt, the rules. But, I mean, it's just what it is. I kind of looked at it like, you know what, James, you're here for week 1. Be thankful for that, and then hope that you can get out here for week 2. But it was definitely a different vibe. And me personally, I had no problem doing it. I mean, wearing the mask, I got one that's pretty comfortable. Actually, from a former Maryville student, he has his own clothing line, and I bought a shirt from a while back, and he actually gave me a mask in it too, and it's actually the best mask I have. So I've been wearing my God-made clothing mask ever since. And, it's a little weird not seeing people's smiles and things like that, but overall, I thought that at least at Andran and Maryville, it was a good start to the football season.
James, I was one of the people who thought there was going to be no fall sports. I didn't know how that was going to happen. I really didn't, and I'm really enthusiastically amazed. I don't know if I can put all those words together to see that we've actually been able to pull off a fall school program out here. Can you go into a little bit, what does this look like right now, the high school sports in the pandemic? You got a number of teams you just said that are not going to play, the schools that are not going to play fall sports, football, per se, and other sports. How is that going to work out? How are these teams going to play and eventually, hopefully, find out to crown a champion at the end of the season? How's that all going to work out?
So that's the money question, right? I think that right now, like I kind of alluded to a few seconds ago, is that it's so fluid. Like literally, you all, I'm every week, I would say every 2 to 3 days, and for a while there, every day I was doing a COVID-19 update story on prep sports. Which schools are stopping? Which schools are suspended? So for a while, I think we got to maybe 13 or 14 schools that had stopped or suspended or restarted their summer workouts because of COVID-19. And those are the only ones that I could find out about. Now, there might be others, smaller schools that I wasn't really aware of, didn't know anything about, but those were the ones that we knew. So I know for a fact at least 13 or 14 schools had to shut down. And even, for example, Valpo Football, they're probably not going to play this upcoming week because they just barely were able to play last week because of people being in quarantine and things like that. So I think that every week is going to be kind of like the pickup football, pickup soccer type of thing where you just hope that you're able to, find an opponent and get a game in. And I think that realistically speaking, I would be shocked if a team was able to make it through a complete 9-game regular season before going into the playoffs. But one thing I do want to point out is the IHSA just came out and said yesterday in their COVID-19 COVID-19 update, that if a team is unable to play in the postseason because of COVID-19, it is ruled as a no contest, and the other team just advances. If you get to the postseason and you're going to play in the sectional championship, but you can't play that week because of COVID-19, your season's over, and the other team just wins and goes on. So that's the biggest thing.
Now, James, where is the cutoff point for that? How is that left to the individual school districts or down to the individual school to know whether they're going to be able to play or not? Is that something that the Indiana High School State Association has written out these rules saying if you have this amount of players that test positive, are there anything in place, or is it just really all fluid? It is up to the teams themselves on how to figure out if they're going to play or not.
Right. It's basically up to the teams. I mean, this is a question I've called the IHSA head office and spoken to people, who would know answers to those things. And basically it's up to the school and the county they're in. For example, Calumet would love you playing football right now, but the county says they can't, and the school district says they can't.
Yeah.
But, you have other schools in Lake County that are obviously playing and moving forwards, but it's basically up to the school. And honestly, that's where that integrity comes in, and really some tough decisions might have to be made down the line. If you're a really good football team, or really any team, I know we're focused on football because that's like the breadwinner, but obviously there's other fall sports across country, girls soccer, boys soccer, but it comes down to doing, what's best for your kids as far as their safety. And, at this point, that might mean having to forfeit basically your chance to move on in the postseason if it comes down to not having enough kids healthy to play. Because, realistically, you need probably about 40 kids for a football game, obviously you need 22 on the field at all times, but you can't play 22 all snaps, all game for every, phase, offense, defense, special teams. So you need more than that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, it's just every week is something new. And honestly, I feel like this is just going to be one of those years, whatever happens, we're all going to look back on it like, what if this, what if that, because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, when we look at some of the games that were played and what happened over the past week, let's talk about two teams in particular. Let's talk about what happened with Maryville and Andrean, the Battle of Broadway, and then what was going on with Crown Point. So those are two games that when I looked at the scoreboard, it was interesting and they popped out. But the Battle of Broadway was one of the biggest ones. So can you tell the listeners what actually took place and what happened in that game?
Yeah, the Battle of Broadway, it's just, to me, a 6A school, a really good 6A school, beat a really good 2A school. I think Andrean is one of the premier programs in the region, but frankly speaking, it's hard to compete with Maryville because they have so many more kids. Andrean has a lot of 2-way players, and Maryville probably doesn't have many, outside of their linemen. So I think that it really showed, just how special that program is and just how big that program is. Just sheer size. Maryville was huge, and they have some dynamic players, man. I think one of the players everyone kind of knew to keep an eye on was JoJo Johnson, who transferred from Morton, who was actually had their season canceled. He transferred way before any of this happened, for those that they're speculating. So he transferred back in January, and he's a Division I recruit going to Cincinnati, and he put on a show, caught a touchdown pass, ran back a kick return. And then also one player to keep an eye on is Tank Logan. His real name is Lavarion Logan, but people call him Tank and he lives up to his name. Their running back, he's a junior. He's built like a tank. He's got the breakaway speed, doesn't go down on first contact. He is, in my opinion, I saw him and I was like, wow, this kid could be one of the best running backs in Northwest Indiana. Honestly,
wow.
He's that good. He had 4 touchdowns, 229 yards on the ground on 18 carries. He had a 70-yarder and a 55-yarder. The kid he's a stud. So they looked really, really good. I think Andrean will be fine. The same thing happened last year. They kind of got beat up. But again, you're facing one of the premier programs in the state, and it's a 6A program. So nothing to hang your head over. But Andrean looked pretty good. They have a kid, Drake Bowen. He is a sophomore. He already has a Division I offer from Cincinnati, linebacker, really good kid and really good athlete as well. So I think Andrean, they got a new quarterback. They have to figure some things out on that front, but I think they'll be fine going into their week 2 game at Lake Central. And also, Maryville's going to be going to the Brickyard to face Hobart this Friday. I'll be there that's going to be an amazing game. I spoke to the athletic director at Hobart today, and he's trying to figure out how he's going to accommodate all the media that wants to be there. And I told him I'll sit anywhere as long as I can see the field. So I don't care if it's outside, in the press box, on the bleachers, on a chair.
Yeah.
Like, I'm with it, you know. So it should be exciting. Hobart's ranked number 1 in the state for 4A, and then I think Maryville's like number 4, number 6 or something like that in 6A. So it's going to be a really good game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good game. I think it's going to be competitive. And when we talk about competitive games, we are going to talk about that on the Sizzle all the time, as we have. Last season, we talked about competitive games. This is our new segment, The Wrap, and it's going to talk to you about prep sports. Jay, I know you love prep sports, so I know you always have questions and you've got things that you've got to get out. So tell the people something.
You know, there was a lot of football being played, and the girls were participating too. You know what I'm saying? But we're talking about European football. We're talking about soccer. What's going on with girls soccer in the region?
I'm heading out to Crown Point today. And this will be Tuesday, the 25th, to see Portage at Crown Point, 2 of my teams in my top 10.
Wow.
I think that the thing with girls soccer that everyone wants to keep an eye on is Valparaiso and Chesterton. That's like the rivalry. Every year they meet in the postseason, and somehow it's always kind of dramatic how it happens. So I think those are the 2 top teams in the region at the moment. I think Crown Point is probably right there, number 3. Yeah. And again, my rankings came out probably like 2 weeks ago, so I have to update them this upcoming week. This is my first time getting out to an actual game. But I think that there's a couple programs keeping an eye on, like I said, Chesterton, Valparaiso, and the DAC, and you have Boone Grove in the Porter County Conference, who won their first regional title last year. They only lost 1 starter to graduation. So they should be really, really, really good. Again, keep an eye on Lexi Darnell, one of the top players in the region, honestly. I mean, the girl is just dynamic. I mean, she is must-see TV in soccer. I mean, it's incredible. She's already got over 100 goals in her career, and she's just starting off her senior year now. So she's a school record holder by far. Great player. And then also, you got Munster, who's always good. And then you got some other programs like Highland and NCC trying to make some noise. So I think there's a good plethora of talent. And one thing to keep an eye on, though, is with Valparaiso specifically, their best player from last year, who was our player of the year, Annalise Rubin, she's not going to play her senior year because of an ankle injury. So unfortunately, that's a big blow for them. Yeah,
that's huge.
When I put out my top 10 rankings, that's the reason why Valpo wasn't number 1. Again,
I was wondering about that, James, because I know she was coming back, and I hadn't heard about that's news right now. I did not know she wasn't playing this year.
Yeah, because I called their coach for my preseason, rankings and just trying to get a feel for what's going on. And, he didn't mention her as one of the players. So I just asked him, I said, hey, what's going on with Annalise? And she's like, oh, she's not going to play. I was like, oh, wow. So she was our player of the year. And obviously people can put as much weight on that as they want to, but I do take it seriously when I give out that player of the year award. And she earned it. She helped them win, I believe, another sectional title and almost helped them win a regional title as well. So they're a good program still. And the one thing I love about rankings, whether it's football, girls soccer, boys soccer, whatever, prove me wrong or prove me right. People have their opinions. They get mad and say, hey, why is this team lower than this team and all that? But I love it because it means they're watching it. And honestly, if you use it as bulletin board material, be my guest. I'm all for it. But honestly, I think it's going to be a fun season for girls soccer. And I just like the tenacity of it. They ask us every year what we want to cover. And I always think the girls beat just because, one, I want to definitely uplift the female athletes in the region. And number 2, they're great in their own right. So I just love the sport.
We always bring the noise, and we talk about the noise, and James, you always bring it. But we've got to talk about who is your student athlete? Who's that outstanding student athlete of the week that you'd like the listeners to know about?
I would have to go with Liam Shepard from Valparaiso football. He hit a 37-yard field goal in the closing seconds against Penn on the road this past weekend on Saturday to lift Valpo to that first win of the season in their season opener. They were dead in the water. I think they trailed like 17-6 or something like that in the fourth quarter. Or no, they actually trailed 16-7 in the fourth quarter. Came back and won that game 17-16 on his 37-yard field goal with a few seconds left. That takes a lot of guts and a lot of confidence and obviously a lot of clutchness to come through in that moment. And one thing to keep in mind, like we talked about earlier, Valparaiso was actually without a number of their key players because of being in quarantine and things like that. So they were without their offensive lineman, John Hoffer, who's verbally committed to Western Michigan, one of the top football players in the region. So without him kind of blocking things up front, obviously you can imagine how difficult it was. And on top of that, their transfer quarterback, Maximus Grimes, who's lit it up the past 2 years. He transferred in from Lafayette Jefferson. Over the past 2 years, he's thrown, I believe, 68 touchdown passes and 9 interceptions. So he's a stud. But he got knocked out of the game early on. They had to put in their backup quarterback. So they were still able to gut out a win. And for that reason, obviously, Liam Shepard is the player of the game coming through like that. Because you rarely see, field goals made at the high school level, and let alone a 37-yarder for the game, basically. So shout out to Liam. I know he was probably the man of the hour. And kudos to the Valpo team for just showing that the heart of the champion that we saw last year when they came back against Maryville. Eerily similar to them. Coming back against the Pirates. And I think that one thing about Valpo is that you can never really count them out until it's over. So they gutted one out, and they're undefeated so far.
That young prep kicker, he could probably be used right there on the lakefront down there in Soldiers Field because we need a guy who can hit a clutch field goal. That would be fantastic.
Oh, man, yeah, I definitely thought about it myself, but I'm trying to save myself from the misery of my Bears just yet. So we'll see what happens with the NFL season. But, I definitely could have loved to see him a couple years ago. We needed him to go on that postseason run.
Yeah, good. James, I know you've written a couple of pieces out, some social conscious pieces. I know you're a guy who's going to really speak his mind on something that needs to be talked about. Can you enlighten our listeners right now of some things you've been writing about and things that have been on your mind?
Yeah, I wanted to start off by saying the first thing that was on my mind, especially when I woke up this morning, was just Jacob Lake in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I put a little rant out there on my Instagram the other day. It feels like everyone kept telling me it felt different with George Floyd. And honestly, I could say the same for myself. Like, it felt like it was different. But then this happened where an unarmed black man is shot 7 times in front of his kids in broad daylight. And it comes to find out none of the police officers were wearing body cams, even though the police department had voted to fund for body cams a couple of years ago. It makes you wonder why weren't they ever put on, or why weren't they ever bought and used. And it makes you also think, if it wasn't for that civilian video, would the narrative be the same? So that's been on my mind. And I think that one of the things I really want to push people to do is to do something that's uncomfortable, whether that's protesting, donating, researching, or learning. I think that it becomes exhausting for Black people specifically, and people of color really overall, to have to explain the oppression as the oppressed people. Like, it's not our job to dismantle the system of oppression. It's those in power that have the power to change things, and those that frankly don't look like me that have the power to change those things. So that's what's on my mind, and I kind of alluded to a lot of that in my article that I wrote, right after George Floyd was murdered. And that was, as a Black sports writer, I won't stick to sports. His death was personal. And when I wrote that piece, it went everywhere. And for the most part, I would say 99% of it was positive feedback. And I got people that messaged me and disagreed and told me I was wrong. But honestly, I felt like it was my opportunity to speak on a lot of things that have always weighed on my mind. And that was my first time ever really speaking about my Blackness in my writing. Usually as a writer, I try not to become the story ever, because I like to just focus on the kids and the people that I write about on a day-to-day basis. But in that moment, I felt like it was important to address the elephant in the room. Like, I am 99% of the time the only Black sports reporter I see whenever I'm out in the field. So I know that comes with a certain expectation that I hold myself to. So I just wanted to show some love to the kids that may see me or look up to me in some way. I'm not saying I'm a role model by any means, but I definitely want to show the kids around the region and the ones that are at Calumet, at Gary, at Westside, at Bowman, at Maryville, that they, that I'm there for them and I care about them beyond sports. So that's been on my mind a lot lately. I think that the dialogue that we're having now is good, but I really want to push people to, try to enact some type of tangible change in their life, no matter what that could look like. It might not be, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Sojourner Truth, or Harriet Tubman, but, Rosa Parks, but it could definitely be some change that you can enact, for yourself in your neck of the woods.
Boyd's Noise, the best source for prep information in the region. James, we love when you come on, but it's always too short. We never have enough time to really sit down and chop it up. But in the future, we're going to sit down and really chop it up with you and really get to do a one-on-one with you so that we can get a good feel for what you want to put out there. But you got to tell the people, first of all, if they want to find you on Instagram or any type of social media, how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, just search Romeoville Kid, Facebook, James Boyd. All my social media is wide open. It's to me, I feel like once you post it, whether it's on a private account or not, someone's going to see it. So all is wide open. Feel free to follow me, tweet me, tell me that my rankings are wrong. I love it. I enjoy it. But yeah, feel free to add me on social media. I think that, it's a good way for us to continue dialogue and to really just connect. I mean, there's always stories I'm putting out, but there's always other crazy stuff I'm talking about, like my beloved Lakers and LeBron James and things like that. So it's fun, and I think it allows people to see that I'm more than just, some guy who just clocks in and writes a bunch of stories. Like, I have a life outside of this too. And a lot of it is based off of the sports world, so I'm always enjoying to talk about professional sports and things like that. So
I know you're happy about that Lakers win, man.
Oh, of course. We had the Mamba black jerseys on. We had to go hard for the man. So, yeah, that was it right there. I was talking so much trash, and, it's fun to banter about those things. And I think people need to understand that I will debate about sports all day. When it comes to these social issues we just talked about, I can't debate about that. Like, those things are set in stone, and we have to stand on our principles when it comes to that. But, when it comes to sports and who's the GOAT, I'm going to tell you it's LeBron, and then, enjoy all of the MJ backlash.
Yeah, I know that's word. So listen, man, we thank you so much for coming on the show, because I know that you're running and you're busy, but we appreciate it. You're listening to Boyd's Noise here on The Sizzle on Iron Skillet Radio, Iron Skillet Television. We are the talk of the 219.